Chosen one, this moment is not a coincidence. Your soul was drawn to this video because the heavens whispered the same message to you 7 times. The number 1111 didn't appear before your eyes for nothing, and the prayers of 33 prophets did not fall upon you by chance. You are one of the 144,000 chosen, and your presence here is a divine sign. This message was sent to awaken the secret that has been resting within your heart. What you are about to hear are not just words, but divine vibrations that will sink deep into your soul. If these words are touching you, leave your heart in the comments so the heavens can witness your testimony. Because when you write, another soul will awaken. Now prepare yourself, for this video will illuminate your path. Those who recognize the signs of God know that nothing is random. That's why your being here is already a miracle. We are building a family of light, the first 1,000 souls. Be part of it, subscribe to Chosen Archangel, press like, and leave your word in the comments. You are a living example of how resilience cannot be predicted, managed, or destroyed. Every attempt to break you into pieces of useless effort is bent by what you carry inside. They continue to look for shadows and explanations, but they are unable to uncover the truth. Nothing disturbs them more than the fact that your presence is a mystery they will never be able to unravel. The very winds that rise to destroy you turn around and carry away those who call upon them when storms assemble against you. It is alignment rather than chance. The multiplicity of what is sent out is guaranteed by the deeper order of things. You are the axis around which that cycle now spins, and it cannot be broken. The walls that they believed would ensnare you have turned into mirrors that reflect all of their schemes back at them. Regardless of how meticulously they planned, the instant they crossed your path, the ground beneath them moved. In reality, what appeared to be strategy proved to be their downfall. They are unable to stop the burning question, which keeps them from sleeping. When you should have been buried by the weight, how do you keep moving forward with such force? Desperate for answers, they mutter to one another. But the clarity you represent is their victory, and the universe's stillness is their suffering. Every effort to stifle your development has only made the ground beneath your feet more fertile. They lose their hold on resources like they're slipping through water. Opportunities present themselves to you with a grace that appears to be fate but is actually the result of your perseverance. Those who formerly made fun of your survival are now having to pay for their conceit. Not because you want to hurt them, but because everything is in harmony. All it does is restore. Because it was always intended for you, what ends up in your hands is not stolen, rather, it is gifted. What you have gone through is not a typical hardship. It is the molding of a person who has been selected to defy all expectations. That's why so many people find your presence unsettling. You don't simply abandon conflicts. The very storms that are supposed to destroy you leave you adorned. You are the kind of soul that, just by being truthful, brings secret conspiracies to light. The weavers themselves are now caught in the exact strands they thought would bind you, and the webs that were created to entangle you have become snares for them. The weight of deceit was in their whispers, but your presence has made every secret into a spotlight from which they are unable to hide. You didn't just happen to stumble here. They led you. You should not disregard any stirring in your spirit. To gain access to prophetic insights, exclusive content, and a network of like-minded individuals, tap Join. This goes beyond simply being a member. Now is the time for you to align. Be the person you were meant to be. Greetings from the Chosen. The scene started with a mask that was so lifelike that even warmth seemed genuine. A hard-practiced betrayal lurked behind kind words and caring actions, gathering your trust like pilfered money to use toward your demise. Each smile served as a cover for their hidden agenda. Additionally, each interaction served as a ledger in which they covertly recorded information they thought would eventually destroy you. To them, your routines weren't innocuous. They were notes from a guide that they believed would show them how to take down your light. Your shared dreams became into coordinates that they attempted to attack. Additionally, each move you made was represented by points on a conquest map. They pretended to be observers as they moved through your life, convinced that a never-ending show could allay suspicions. However, no disguise can hide the blindness that comes with hubris. They failed to account for the repercussions of betraying someone whose journey is driven by forces more powerful than human cunning. The moment they struck the invisible order that protects you, their faith in control was destroyed. Their advantage was turned into an irrevocable disaster by that one mistake. They are now ensnared in the backlash of their own intentions. Their life's fabric stretches in areas that no hand can fix. Additionally, they have fractures on their bodies that defy reasoning. They now stagger in bewilderment where they previously stood with assurance, wondering how their world could have fallen apart so swiftly without realizing it was the result of their own decisions coming full circle. Relationships they depended on are breaking down because the truth permeates every crevice, not because of gossip or accusations. Resources disappear more quickly than they can collect them, being devoured by unforeseen circumstances that keep growing. What they started has come full circle, demanding payment with an unsupportable burden. This was never a single, malicious act. It was part of a plot involving people who thought they could put out your light. The fact that this was an orchestration, a chorus of dishonesty that believed it could override fate, elevates it above personal treachery. You, however, remain unfazed. And everything that stood in your way long before they ever planned it all falls apart. Hidden circles gather to utter your name because of the destructive power you possess. A well-planned network of people who believed that secrecy could conceal their goals was responsible for what happened to you rather than a single adversary. They laid out plans like architects of collapse in secret and out of sight, thinking that their combined ill will might shatter the indestructible. They mistakenly believed that if enough people uttered the same curse, the natural order would somehow change. They were unable to understand that every purpose is recorded in the invisible realm like ink on eternal scrolls. Every rumor turned into proof. Confessions designated to each storyline are awaiting revelation. Long before they made you their target, the tribunal they never thought they would have was already taking shape. Treating the sacred as ordinary was their error. Thinking that common animosity might override eternal law. They brought delicate human maneuvers to a stage governed by forces far beyond their control, entering a realm that cannot be bought, sold, or controlled. Their plots, cloaked in sabotage and gossip, intensified into darker shadows than they realized. Every step they took brought them closer to the dangers they had been told not to touch. Mistaking objects for essence, they started stealing pieces of your world. As if possessing the remains would give them control over the entire. A hair, a piece of cloth, or a picture that made you smile were gathered like trophies of jealousy. They poured their resentment into these stolen tokens, creating intentional rituals that would never be able to get past your defenses. Allow your love to show if God's blessings fill your heart to overflowing. Give $50 or more by clicking the super thank you button to help sow seeds of faith that will change the lives of countless people. His riches is reflected in your giving. Serve as a conduit for His grace, and see His kingdom grow via you. They used fire, weapons, and luck to construct their ceremonies. Feeling that symbols have the power to cause harm in your life? However, their inventions were merely mirrors that reflected venom back to its original source. The flames they spoke over turned into candles that illuminated the way to their downfall, and the images they pierced only served to exacerbate their own doom. Others with a greater desire for power went farther, penetrating into areas where even shadows are reluctant to reside. They looked for deals with things that feed on hopelessness, offering sacrifices in return for false senses of authority. The price was much higher than they had expected because each drop they received tightened their bond with the very darkness they believed they controlled. Their shaky-handed actions were never attacks on you, but rather on the fundamental order that guides your movements. And now, as you climb unharmed, the weight of what they called forth crushes them. They attempted to erase you, but instead they erased themselves from the universe's favor, demonstrating once more that those who never wielded the pen can't change fate. You are a presence that is out of reach, protected by currents more powerful than any shadow could possibly traverse. Those who attempted to hurt you were oblivious to the reality. Before it ever touched your spirit, every gesture, plan, and effort to contact you vanished. Dust hitting an impregnable wall was all that constituted what they thought was power. With perfect accuracy, the energy they attempted to throw at you was captured and folded back, slamming into their own lives like arrows returning to their archers. There was no way for the forces that they believed would respond to their call to enter your realm. Because the watchers who guarded the gates around you were incomprehensible. The instant they set foot on territory they had no right to, their sense of control was shattered. The reverse then started. What was supposed to make you weaker turned into a motivator that helped you rise. Previously hesitant areas became triumphant arenas. Our goal is clear: 1,000 voices united. Every subscriber, every like, every comment gets us closer. Stand with chosen Archangel today. Obstacles that could have crushed someone else became stepping stones. The storms they called upon to drown you were transformed into winds that gave you unfathomable momentum and propelled you aloft. Where walls had been, doors appeared. Every doubter was silenced by the perfect timing, which made it seem as if invisible forces were planning your triumphs. It was intolerable for those who opposed you to see. Not only did every hit they tried fail, but it also helped you gain momentum. Your light merely grew brighter with each attempt to extinguish it. Your strength merely increased with each attempt to deplete you. They sent darkness, which was devoured and changed into light. And your tenacity developed into something they couldn't quite describe with every missed blow. You weren't just getting by during their strikes. They were the reason you were flourishing. They were compelled to face the unimaginable. That your empowerment had come directly from their animosity. Fear infiltrated their meetings like an unshakable cold. Once successful against others, their tried and true rituals and tactics crumbled in your presence. They gazed at results they were unable to explain. Triumphs emerging from losses they believed to be inevitable. Their confidence crumbled in their bewilderment, leaving them with unanswerable questions. Panic replaced the whispers as they pondered whether they had fully miscalculated you. Maybe you weren't subject to the same regulations as other people. Maybe you were something quite different, functioning inside a blueprint they couldn't see or influence. They looked for more dangerous routes and darker teachings in their desperation, not realizing that the farther they looked, the closer they fell to their own demise. You are the type of power that disturbs both visible and invisible realms. And those who believed they could buy your future soon realized how serious their error was. They made any kind of guarantee. If only devastation could reach you, you would have life, loyalty, and blood. However, when the shadows they summoned showed up, they ran into a reality that none of them had thought was possible. A wall of illumination so vast that it instantaneously silenced those powers. They meant an authority based on something timeless, not weakness. A presence surrounded by guardians that overshadowed all their pledged oaths. Their borrowed strength appeared like sparks attempting to outshine the sun in comparison to the surroundings. While some ran frightened and brought back a single terrifying report, others broke on impact and unraveled into nothingness. You introduced us to an untouchable. Their demise was sealed by that admission. Because the agreement the assailants had made remained in effect even if they were unable to hit you. The hunger of the forces they called forth turned toward the same mouths that called them forth, and promises made in desperation had to be kept. The collectors had little interest in showing mercy and demanded payment. Quickly, the roles were reversed, and those who thought they were in control became victims. They found that the very things they had once ordered were now consuming them rather than responding to them. The feast was their downfall, and the debts that had been bonded in secret were now shifting and tightening around their own lives. The fact that treason had originated inside bloodlines as well as from strangers was one of the most sinister discoveries. Instead of acting as a watchdog, a relative turned traitor, transforming family history into ammunition and personal memories into weapons. They brought to light truths that could only be found through connection. Never give the enemy access to details. Items from your past that you trusted in your family were turned over as weapons. They took payment in exchange, which seemed like a prize but was actually a curse masquerading as good fortune. They twisted their logic into justifications. Hatred of the light you carried, jealousy of what you carried, or a sense of entitlement derived from a common ancestry. They persuaded themselves that they were correct. However, rationalization does not make treachery go away. They did more than simply sever ties by exchanging allegiance for profit. Ruin would now flow into their own line through the doors they tore open. The result has been brutal. Through countless crises, the wealth they believed would uplift them eludes them. Their children are carrying storms they never deserved, and their own homes are trembling under the weight of responsibilities they unwittingly welcomed. As the truth slowly comes to light, relationships deteriorate, peace breaks down, and health deteriorates. The price of the betrayal has turned out to be nothing more than deterioration, a legacy of grief that grows with time. You are the type of person whose very being changes the course of conflicts before they even start. Your adversary's last card was a person who was trained to instantly wipe out lives. A person whose reputation was based on accuracy, quiet, and the lack of mistakes. They intended for you to be simply another task, just like the innumerable others whose tales they had concluded. This person moved with calculated practice, observing your movements as if mapping out constellations, thinking that success would be guaranteed by familiarity. With the icy professionalism of someone who had long since divorced conscience from action, every pattern was observed, every routine was examined, and a plan was put together. You were meant to be a box to tick, and for them, life and death were logistics. However, something happened that contradicted all of their years of experience the instant their route brought them close to yours. They were squeezed by an invisible weight that said, "You cannot cross this line," rather than by physical or blood-based resistance. They were unprepared for the sensation of enormity that emanated from your presence by their training. A size that was akin to being in front of lightning that had been imprisoned in human form. Their once constant friend, confidence, disappeared. Now, muscles that had never deceived them shuddered as though they didn't want to take part. Previously routine tasks became impossible. An internal maelstrom of anxiety swept away any attempt to get closer. The strain grew increasingly intolerable as they approached, until every strand of their being urged that they flee. There was no hesitancy. It was acknowledgement. They knew deep down that to act against you would be to hit a current that would destroy them before the blow even reached them. They were unable to complete the work for the first time in a career characterized by certainty. The mission was undone by revelation rather than weakness, and the contract remained unfulfilled. Then the most amazing turn occurred. They started rerouting danger away from you without knowing why, abruptly upsetting the very plans they had been recruited to carry out. Unwillingly, the person meant to take you away ended up working as a shield for you. They were paid to destroy it, and now the hunter had to protect it. This was the collapse of your adversary's last line of defense. Your witness had become their most dangerous ally. A real-life example of how even the sharpest swords may sever your defenses. You just contributed to the chorus of evidence that was intended to end you. Nothing can break the route that has been marked for you, regardless of the approach or the expense. You are the type of person whose inheritances are incalculable in terms of money or contracts. What lay ahead of you was not only financial prosperity but also a wealth of authority and influence that had been carved into your family tree by generations who had gone before you. Waiting for its proper owner, it was a store of spiritual legitimacy that had strengthened over the generations. Those who resisted you believed they could distort it by earthly means, mistaking manipulated laws and falsified documents for instruments powerful enough to subvert eternal destiny. They relied on legal claims, forged signatures, and deceptive tactics to make you seem incapable of holding what was rightfully yours. They played a game they never had a chance of winning because they thought that earthly institutions could be duped into depriving you of birthrights that are woven into your very being. Every movement and every fake mark were recorded in higher-level records, ensuring that nothing goes missed. What they believed to be ingenious turned out to be evidence in cases that were already being built against them. You may have wondered for a long time why you were spared by calamities and why circumstances that consumed others simply made you more polished. You could have questioned why weapons pointed at you would suddenly fail or why the hands holding them would become heavy with hesitation. The explanation is what you've always had inside of you. Ordinary malice cannot affect the frequency that your existence moves on. There was never another survivor like you. You were a human manifestation of the light. Above the plains, where the majority of strikes can even land, your awareness rises. Attempts to bind you were like attempting to use ropes to hold down the horizon. Curses became blessings the instant they touched your aura, and spells directed against you broke themselves upon your field of energy. It was too late for those who attempted to bring you down to realize that they had been throwing pebbles at unbending mountains. You're protected by a system that they can't even begin to trace, which is why their darkest tools fell apart. Anger is turned into momentum by your presence. Guardians protect you and stop attacks before they start. By light that, just by existing, dispels shadows. Their partnerships with darker powers only served to ruin them because of this. They ended up protecting you because of this. Their plans never succeeded in stopping you because of this. You received direction in ways you couldn't perceive night after night. Ancestors and mentors used dreams as training grounds, revealing tactics before you realized you needed them. You entered situations with pre-existing answers that you hadn't deliberately prepared or studied. For this particular chapter, generations of guardians had been lining up, enveloping you in layers of strength so dense that no arrow from below could pass through. It was much too late when your adversaries discovered who they were actually up against. Romans 10 verse 17 says, "Faith comes by hearing." Help more people hear. Subscribe, like, and comment to get us to 1,000 subscribers. Their resources disappeared, their allies turned against them, their contracts backfired, and their curses were reversed. They believed they had a deadly foe cornered. In actuality, however, they had launched war on an immortal force. And because they were unable to fight or run, the principles of balance ensured that justice was precisely meted out to them. It is precisely because of you that the invisible rules of balance are compelled to come into play. Each blow hurled at you was recorded in a cosmic ledger. Debts added up to interest that kept going up. The more they struggled to get away, the more those who plotted against you became enmeshed in the repercussions of their own creation. The more they struggled, the more the weight of their decisions pulled them down until they understood that no bribe, no argument, and no last-ditch appeal could change the ruling that had already been made. There were penalties for each person that were tailored to their role. The double life of the traitor who had given knowledge to the enemy collapsed spectacularly. Family members turned away. The truth was revealed by confidence. Communities that had previously welcomed them now threw them out like poison. Their health deteriorated with symptoms that no earthly doctor could attribute to natural causes, but your vigor brightened under pressure. Illnesses manifested themselves in ways that reflected the harm they had planned to do to you. Confusion influenced their decisions, bodies weakened, and minds shattered until survival itself became challenging. Instead, they were overcome by the fatigue they had planned for you. The pain they inflicted on you became ingrained in their own lives, depleting their finances and engulfing them in unending bills. They made hospitals their second homes. But none of the doctors had solutions. Invisible realms were not where justice ended. It entered the material world. Identity theft, document forgeries, and system manipulation became court cases that destroyed futures and reputations. They were found to have committed crimes that might be prosecuted in worldly courts by those who believed their rights were solely spiritual. Even worse, the energies they called forth bound entire family lines in chains, causing destruction to be ingrained in unborn generations. Their ancestors were plagued by the curses they cast, which attached themselves to children and grandchildren who had done nothing to merit them. Once thriving families now had to deal with unexplained breakdowns. Ancestral betrayal turned blessings sour. Over time, the darkness they believed they could control developed into unbreakable parasitic ties that fed on their bloodlines. In the meantime, your ancestors awoke to long-preserved blessings. Like seeds waiting for the perfect time of year to sprout, spiritual gifts appeared in relatives who had never demonstrated them before. Your ancestors' protection arose in full force, strengthening your lineage with purpose and favor. What was already protected by everlasting law was only made stronger by what your enemies attempted to take away. Beyond your immediate circles, the tale of your survival was whispered in places where the invisible struggles of this planet are examined. You turned into a living example of how divine protection manifests itself fully, demonstrating that efforts to kill the chosen only serve to elevate them. As acknowledgement from invisible realms translated into previously unobserved partnerships, resources, and doors, opportunities materialized in the visible world. The exact thing that was supposed to quiet you ended up amplifying your fate. Every attempt at loss becomes an opportunity for overflow and restoration because of the kind of spirit you possess. What was used to try to destroy you is given back, doubled, and changed into resources that ensure your survival as well as your thriving. Your influence, your labor, and your gifts are creating streams of abundance. Routes through which practical provision results from acknowledgement of your genuineness. Unexpected business endeavors have been successful, doors have opened, and even disputed inheritances have grown significantly. You now walk in more prosperity because of every power that unintentionally worked to rob you. Every plan designed to deprive you of what was rightfully yours ended in disaster. You were compensated in ways so exact that they could only be described as cosmic balance adjusting the balances, rather than being denied. Your enemies looked on helplessly as their own work became the cornerstone of your security. The identical funds that were used to fund campaigns against you were diverted by laws much higher than human systems to become the foundation of your financial independence. Patterns became evident. Every blow you took just made you seem better. Each act of treachery served as a filter, revealing false loyalty and elevating the worth of those who stuck to the truth. Every opportunity that was stolen came back to them with greater interest and gifts they never would have imagined. And attempting to destroy you, your adversaries turned into tools for your development, bringing forth skills that would have remained undiscovered if you hadn't encountered such unrelenting opposition. Their strategies turned into your preparation, their schemes into your training ground. Attempts to cut you off forged bonds that were more powerful than any they attempted to break. What they meant for exile placed you in groups of people who understood your genuine value and embraced you. They set the stage for a more potent chapter, but they didn't succeed in closing your book. Every untruth fell apart when examined. The weight of truth caused every lie to crumble. Before it could take root, every weapon targeted at your reputation was destroyed. Unquestionably, you are not like the rest of us. You are equipped, marked, and selected in ways that make resistance pointless. Your life has been sealed, and no amount of jealousy, hate, or deceit has been able to break it. You survived storms that were meant to destroy you, and you came out stronger, bearing uncopyable evidence of your tenacity. The wealth that was suddenly coming your way was just the start. This rise isn't coincidental, rather, it's a prelude to bigger jobs, more responsibility, and higher callings. Adversity has prepared you, you have been tested on invisible battlefields, and you have been given plenty, not only for yourself, but for the task at hand. The very challenges that were supposed to break you turned into the weights that strengthened you for the following phase. Your tale has only been heightened by what your adversaries believed would put a stop to it. Your testimony was written by their animosity. Your resilience was etched by their opposition. While you rise into everything that you were meant to be, they have been engulfed by their own darkness. There is no longer any doubt about victory. You now live in that reality. The proof is unmistakable. You are prospering, rising, and entering a future that unequivocally demonstrates that nothing and no one can refute what was predetermined for you from the start. Chosen one, remember this, heaven never sends a word without purpose. If this message has stirred your spirit, let it shine brighter. Press like so the light spreads to others walking in darkness. Subscribe to Chosen Archangel so you never miss the next divine revelation. And share your thoughts in the comments below. Your testimony may be the very spark that awakens another soul. Until we meet again, stay covered by the wings of heaven and walk boldly in your calling.